Hello and good night. Welcome to Conversation with Rickford Burke. Of course, this is Rickford Burke here in New York. Share the link, everybody. Get into your Guyanese groups. Share the link. We will be discussing a very important topic tonight. My guest will be Attorney at Law Darren Wade. Attorney at Law Darren Wade, and we'll be discussing the U.S. report on human rights report on Guyana. The U.S. State Department's human rights report on Guyana. So share the link, everybody. Get into your guys' group. Share the link. I know that I missed you on Tuesday. I'm here tonight. Text me. Let me know where you're watching from. I see you already. Good night, sir. I see my friend in Japan. Well, you don't have U.S. military work to do. So I see the Guyanese, Japanese, American tuned in already. Share the link, everybody. Get into your Guyanese groups. And get on YouTube. Everybody get on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube page. It's CGID Rickford Burke. CGID Rickford Burke. Subscribe to that page. Like and follow me on my 2 Facebook pages. And everybody share the link. Twitter, WhatsApp, inbox, Facebook inbox, Messenger. Share it via your email, text message, Twitter, YouTube, wherever. Just share the link, and I'll be right back in 60 seconds. Share the link, everybody. All right, keep sharing the link, everyone. Again, tonight we'll be talking about the U.S. Human Rights Report on Guyana, the State Department report, and I'll be talking to Attorney at Law Darren Wade. Everybody get into your Guyanese groups and share the link. I have, some other small topics that I'll bring up in between, but everybody share the link, and we will have the discussion. Text me, let me know where you're watching from. Let me look at some of your comments. Good night, Lily Gulliver. Maryland, good night. Shauna Wickham, good night, everyone. Petrol Torn, good night. Let me know where you're watching from. Lloyd Domingo, West Coast Babis, Profit. Big up West Coast Babis. Everybody share the link, get into your Guyanese groups. Vibrant Right. Good night, sir. East Bank, Demerara. Annette Cummings, good night. Andrew Griffith, good night. Text me, let me know where you're watching from, whatever country you're in right now. Post the flag, let me see. Queens, New York. Hey, cousin Hollis. Big up my cousin Hollis Charles in Queens, New York. Donna McDonald, fan number one. Good night, share the link, share the link, share the link. Good night, Albany, New York. Good night, Mike Coney. Jasmine Innes, big up Jasmine Innes. Mike Coney, Harlem, New York. Matthew, good night. Marlon Perry, California. Everybody keep sharing the link. Kevin Joe, GY. Kevin Abrigo, Linden. Where's Bartica? Come on, y'all wake up the people in Bartica. Wake up, Bartica, please. I'm from Bartica. I'd like to see my Bartica people. Somebody please call the people in Bartica, let them know the conversation with Rick Burke is on. New Amsterdam, Berbice in the house. Nigel Hector, good night. Yana Trotman, good night. Watching from Canada. Canada in the house. Barbados in the house. St. Vincent in the house. Who else? Watching from Guyana, David, good night. Leon Luke, watching from Cariveton. West Coast, Demerara. Kevin Joe, good night. GY is a big place. Montserrat, Keith Cox, good night. Montserrat, I have a very interesting I have a very interesting story about Montserrat. I think I was like 14 or 15, and I went to Montserrat on vacation, and the car turned over. The car overturned with me and my cousin inside. We were going up a hill there, so that's before the volcano. Bartica in the house. Hey, my Roger, man, you're from Bartica. You're from Queens. I meet somebody in Bartica. You cheating this thing, Roger. Good night to my brother, Roger. Good night, Mavis from Trinidad and Trinidad and Tobago. Wizrock in the house. Bridget Vigilance. Good night. Good night. Share the link, everybody. And John, good night, ma'am, my sister. I need a genuine Bartica. Well, somebody living in Bartica. Come on, let's get a competition going. Troy Warner, Washington, good night. Good night. Share the link, everybody, while we have this. I want to see the wide spectrum of viewers here. Watching from LOC Guyana, I'm not sure what is that. Keith Anthony Ben from Florida. Good night, Sandra Facey. Margaret. Wow, that went so quickly. I saw Margaret from Bartica. Van der Hayden. I think that's it, Van der Hayden. I barely saw it. But in Georgetown from Bartica. I need somebody who is in Bartica. I'm not starting the show until I see my fellow Barticians. And everybody know, I keep saying, I need to see Simona on these lives. Simona got to represent Bartica. I think Simona's sleeping right now. She goes to bed at 6 o'clock. Vibrant White, good night. Good night. All right. Share the link, everybody. Share the link, share the link, share the link, share the link. So tonight, I want to talk about the State Department report, Human Rights Report on Guyana. Human Rights Report on Guyana. Share the link, everybody. Good night, sir. Good night, Mark Samuels. I just saw your message. Obviously, I can't talk with you right now because I'm in the middle of the program. But let me see. Let me see if I can share the State Department report here. How do I do this? All right. All right, let me see if I can do this again. I'm trying to share my screen so that you guys can follow. All right. I don't have that, but anyway, I'll try to get it. I am trying to get the report pulled up here. In the meantime, share the link. I have the report in front of me. I'm not able to share it on my screen yet. Technician, could you pull it up? I have a technician here who is incompetent. I'm joking. He's very competent. So let me try that again. Well, I have the report in front of me. I'm just not able to pull it up there as yet. I'm not sure why. But in the meantime, the report, it says Guyana Human Rights Report, and of course I'm waiting on, in 5 minutes, Attorney at Law Darren Wade is going to join me, but I just wanted to summarize the report in the meantime, and then I'll ask some questions of Attorney Darren Wade. The Cooperative Republic of Guyana is a multi-party democracy. The PPP would like, this is not in the report, but I'm saying it's a multi-party democracy. That's what the State Department is saying. We know that the PPP would like to make it a one-party state. National and regional elections took place in March 2020, and the People's Progressive Party won both the presidency and a majority of representational seats. International and local observers considered the elections free and fair. The incumbent government at the time contested the results of the national elections, leading to a 5-month electoral impasse that concluded with the swearing in of the People's Progressive Party government in August 2020. It didn't say election, resulting in the swearing in. It goes on to talk about security. It says there were reports that members of the security forces committed abuses. Significant human rights issues included significant, let me read this back. Significant human rights issues included credible reports of unlawful or arbitrary killings, including extrajudicial killings, laws that criminalize consensual same-sex sexual conduct between adult men, which were not in force, and existence okay, so they're saying included in reports of abuses were laws which were not in force that prohibits same-sex in the country. And they also talked about child labor. The government took steps to identify and prosecute, punish officials committed human rights abuses. I don't know about that. There were several reports that the government or its agents committed arbitrary or unlawful killings. This is in 2022. The United States government is saying they're credible reports, meaning it's true. The government conducted extrajudicial killings. It says in May, the police shot and killed Dinraj Singh. The police officials alleged that Singh was killed during an exchange of gunfire with the police as of October 31st, last year. Police were investigating the case. In June, police shot and killed Pindon Bacchus. According to police officials, Bacchus was the subject of an undercover investigation regarding the purchase of firearms. We know that's not true. It says in July, authorities arrested police officer Christophe Denobrega and charged him with the murder of Pindon Bacchus. As of October 31st last year, no date had been set for the trial. It goes on to talk about torture of prisoners. It says that the condition in Guyana prisons are inhumane and unfit for humans. Inhumane, unfit for humans. In 2018, the government reported a study finding that the prison officers physically abused prisoners and that prison conditions at Lusignan were appalling and cells were unfit for human habitation. Unfit for human habitation. So the United States government has condemned our prisons as unfit. It talks about death as a result of inter-inmate violence. It talks about the abuse of the arrest process. People are, even though the law allows for people to be held 72 hours, it says generally this is obeyed, but there are instances of abuse. There were reports of arbitrary arrest and unlawful detention. In 2021, the Police Complaints Authority issued a report covering 2019, which found most police officers interviewed were ignorant of constitutional provisions regarding arrests and searches. The report noted that a substantial number of members of the Guyana Police Force are under investigation for abuses openly violate the Constitution in the performance of their duties. So, keep sharing the link, everybody. Keep sharing the link, everybody. That was just a tidbit of the report. I'm going to discuss it more in detail when Darren Wade comes up. But imagine, this is 2023. 2023. And the US government has reported that the PPP government engages in extrajudicial killings. They just came back into government and they start killing people already. And when we talk, they're like, that's not true. That's not true. Now, the report also talks about corruption in the police force. Oh my gosh. The report says there is massive corruption, massive, my word, corruption in the Guyana police force. I have been talking about that forever. Forever. Let's see what it says about the Guyana police force. It talks about widespread corruption in the Guyana police force. It talks about civil liberties. It says, oh, one of the things it says that there were isolated reports of government corruption during the year and administration officials investigated these reports. Not true. There remain widespread public perception of corruption involving officials at all levels and all branches of government, including the judiciary. Guyanese. The US State Department said there's a widespread public perception of corruption. Perception is not perception, it's true. That there's corruption at every level of government, all branches of government, including the judiciary and police. Corruption. Corruption by police officers was frequent. Corruption by police officers was frequent. In August, police officer Dion Bascom alleged that a businessman bribed members of the Guyana police force to foil an investigation into the execution-style killing of Ricardo Fagundes, a gold miner. As of October, police had not investigated the Bascom case. Pause here. Let me see if Mr. Wade has joined us. He's not joined us yet. Now, somebody let Darren know that we're waiting on him. Now, the Bascom case is back. Bascom allegations are back. The United States government is saying, as of October, the matter was not investigated. The Attorney General who thinks that he's the Attorney General of the world, issued a very contemptuous statement last night of US authorities. He's saying that is patently false. The Attorney General claims this is patently false, that the Bascom allegations were thoroughly investigated. Absolute nonsense. It was not investigated. There ought to be a criminal investigation of, and I see Mr. Witt has joined us. There ought to be a criminal investigation into the allegations of Dion Bascom. The police conducted an investigation of Dion Bascom and charged him with cybercrime because he called out the corruption in the Guyana police force. And then the so-called Attorney General says that is not true, it was investigated. It was not investigated. The US government is right. The allegations were not investigated. The Guyana police force cannot investigate itself. The crime chief cannot investigate himself. The head of major crimes cannot investigate himself. By the way, good night at CID. I know they're looking. I know you guys said you want me, right? That's a topic for another night. The Bascom allegations were not investigated. And the pompous, audacious, so-called Attorney General obdurately protested last night that the US government was patently false, conflating the police investigation of Bascom as opposed to police investigating or bringing in investigators to investigate the allegations. Everybody share the link. Keep sharing the link. The allegations Dion Bascom made about bribery to cover up this Fagundes murder. But I'll come back to that. I want to go to the report. And let me welcome Attorney at Law, my brother, Darren Wade.
Good night. Good night to you, Rick Ford.
I like that shirt
all
there.
Of your viewers.
You look like Chief Watumba there.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to read the human rights report, but the first question I want to ask: are you aware, as the report says, that there was in 2022 there were credible allegations of extrajudicial killing by the government and or its agents?
Yes, before I think that's nothing new. The entire Guyana populace is aware of the extrajudicial killings that transpired in our country by agents of the state. You know, we have the young Bascom case. Oh, that's correct. Boston in Essequibo.
Mm-hmm.
We have the
Kevin Andrews.
We have Bacchus from East Coast. There's several instances where we see police brutality, extrajudicial killing by the arm of the state. But for me, what is more concerning in the report is the failure to investigate the murder of Fagundes, if I don't know if I pronounce the name correctly.
Ricardo Fagundes, yes.
And corruption in high places in the Guyana police force. What this says is that we don't have an independent and credible police force. What we find in the recent 2 years is the police were prepared, or the state is prepared to use the police to settle political scores. I want to also mention recently what transpired in Letem. The gentleman, they did nothing wrong. They could not find any fault of what the gentleman would have done in Letem after we retake our property in Letem that the PPP unlawfully, criminally trespass on. They find some charge, stick up charge, some bogus charges for those gentlemen, all by exercising their rights, all by associating themselves with the People National Congress. Those are the crimes that these men committed. The constitutional right, where we infringe their freedom of association and so forth. Nothing they have done wrong. So we continue to see an unprofessional police force. The police force cannot, or they're unwilling to perform their duties in a professional way. They are willing to take instructions from those in authority. And if you could recall Paul Slow, no other but the president himself interfering with the police force and the work of the police force. So there's no professionality at the top of the force. What we have is a bunch of guys who are prepared to accept political instructions. When they accept the political instructions, they may be able to get, because as everybody doing something, some businessman may call for a favor, they get a little money here, a little money there. So, and the government going to turn their face on that kind of behavior because these men are doing their bidding. So we have this corruption on corruption, and that is what we're seeing in the police force. Corruption. They're just not prepared. Not prepared. It's about 4 or 5 of them, probably the most. 3, 4, 5 of them the most in the police force who are prepared to take political instructions.
In the leadership you're talking
directly
about, in the
from the
leadership.
government. Yes.
What do you make of the report that says there remained a widespread public perception of corruption involving officials at all levels of all branches of government, including the judiciary and police force?
Oh my. I am on office of the court, Eric Ford. You're putting
No, but it didn't say court only. It says all levels of and all branches of
but the
government.
3 branches of government.
Yeah.
The 3 branches of government. And the judiciary is a branch of government, an independent branch.
But you don't have to
I'm
comment
an
on the
officer of the
judiciary.
court.
But how about
Technically, I'm a member of court. I'm an officer of the court, officer
Right.
of the judiciary.
But what you made of that broad indictment? All levels of all branches of the government.
It is embarrassing. It is embarrassing as a nation, and no surprising. And to buttress the argument of the United States with the corruption, the PPP seems to be unwilling to institute as brother Rambutan was the guardrail, constitutional guardrails, these commissions, the Public Service Commission, so we could have proper persons who are qualified and who could carry out the functions without fear and favor, in a non-discriminatory way, in a way that is professional. But what they want to do is to do this contract employment, and some comrade from bad settlement or somebody who was not qualified, they could already hold a pen or something. Not to say that they're not good people in bad settlement, they're qualified people in bad settlement. But we see what they did, and they have no terrorism charge was laid against them. But you see what they're doing to the people at Golden Grove. And back to our point, so you're going to give them a job, and their thing is to ensure that there's corruption. They tell the person, a set of PPP people, and place them in the general registry office. So to do corruption and to have fraud birth certificates, so they could the list is already bloated, so they're gonna pad the list more with fake persons. They support the person who not born in Guyana, but to get votes. So there is corruption there in the various offices. In relation to the judiciary, and I must say this because the staff, they have been complaining to me for a while, and I haven't highlighted the issue. There's a high turnover of staff. We don't have staff in the judiciary. People leaving every day. Registrars, all of the judges registrars are, so they're leaving
There's a part of the report. There's a
because of
part.
the pay that they are receiving. Let me add that also to see this to the before we mention the point. There's also the issue of not having judges. Of course, I cannot only blame the PPP. Our government since 2017, I believe. I don't know, what we were doing in office, why we were not appointing judges while not we, while the former government, because I wasn't part of the government, whilst they were anointing judges. So there's a backlog of cases. The judges are stressed. So, and it affects the administration of justice. And while the government there 2 3 years they were in power and they've done nothing, yes, they could argue and say, oh, it started from APNU, and APNU is not blameless in this process and what the sufferings of the judiciary and the administration of justice in relation to the judiciary.
Mhm,
I could be we could be frank and open about that.
mhm.
And it was a senseless and a brainless, thing to do, not appointing judges. And we see what goes on in America. So I don't know what political entity we had under David Green administration. You would want to believe that you see that that there are judges to administer justice. So I don't know what was going on in that aspect of governance there, because we didn't have the Judicial Service Commission then. And the PPP have seen the advantage of not having a Judicial Service Commission. And Rick, I want you to comment on the Judicial Service Commission, and we're going to address the judiciary. Then we must also remember that the issue of the Judicial Service Commission, one that we have to look at in a very fair
Right, and the
manner.
Judicial Service
It
Commission is
started under the David Green.
not been constituted as yet, and the judicial no judges could be appointed without a Judicial Service Commission. Correct?
And we have and since and we have Justice Nsinali has retired. Justice Brassington Reynolds has retired. Justice Franklin Older has retired. We have Justice Boville Drakes retired. Several, and Justice Koshas is about to retire. And this crisis continues to affect us all in the administration of justice. And the government is quite happy to have it this way.
The report says the law provides for an independent judiciary, and the government generally respects judicial independence and impartiality. Delays and inefficiencies undermine the judicial process. Shortages of trained court personnel, postponements at the request of defense or prosecution, occasional allegations of bribery, poor tracking of cases, and police slowness in preparing cases for trial all undermine the administration of justice in Guyana. This is an indictment.
Well, I think if we start with the police force, if we talk about the police force generally speaking, it speaks about training and professionalism. It doesn't really this problem. I don't think, of course, it's not one. It's one that for several years. 20 for the last 30 years, the PPP has been in government for at least 25 of those years. So it speaks of the inefficiency and ineffective way in how they see the justice system and training appropriate staff. In order to remedy that, I noticed, a good friend. I know the two of you generally at war, but I must highlight it's a good initiative by him. The current Attorney General did a good thing when they recently appointed prosecutors, because a lot of staff, a lot of persons who graduated from University of Guyana, they will not gain a placement in the Ewing Law School while they may have the LLB. So by allowing them now to prosecute, that I believe they tried. We haven't seen the fruit of it, but it's a good thing to create employment, and hopefully we could see the fruits of that in relation to the prosecution of cases if they could deliver. The putting together of the cases, probably they need to do a lot of work, a lot of training by the police ranks, to put them, to enable them to effectively and efficiently investigate case. because it makes no sense. You have qualified prosecutors, but then the police force is doing nonsense, and we have interference from the government. So on the face of it, it may be there, but then the reality, the prosecutors may have nothing to do, and they are ministers of justice who must be able to carry out their functions.
But there are complaints that most of these people are Indian supporters of the PPP.
That what?
Most of these people being appointed by the Attorney General as, let's say,
That's
lay
not true.
prosecutors or whatever you call them.
That's not true. That's not
okay.
true.
Well,
that's not true.
That's the complaint that we received.
Matter of fact, I would have observed. No. Matter of fact, I observed. Even if you look at the Georgetown Magistrate Court, I can't come in front of you and you put that without a question. They will tell you that they're lying. Because if you check all of the majorities of the courts in, and I own no brief from Mr. Nandalal, none whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
If you check out the Georgetown Magistrate Court and all the courts, it is predominantly black persons who are holding those jobs.
Well, I don't know. I'm not there. We received a letter. We received a letter about a month ago with this, but I mean, we haven't made the letter public. But somebody wrote us about this.
You receive a letter, tell them it's untrue. It is not true. It is not true because generally we know the public service who are African Guyanese are attracted to the public service, and it's no different with the prosecutors who are employed, and so
But I'm sure the person who wrote the letter,
but in the prosecutors majority. Pardon me?
Well, I said I'm giving your comments. I'm sure the people who wrote the letter would further comment on it.
Mm-hmm. I would love to let them further comment because because you asked me the question there, I can't lie and say, oh, it's predominantly Indian because then tomorrow I have to go before the court. You see all the prosecutors, they are black. Majorities are Afro-Guyanese who are prosecuting.
And we're talking here about prosecutors who are representing the Guyana Police Force, not the DPP's office.
I am talking about the prosecutors that are in the Guyana Police Force that were recently appointed. They were sworn in as sergeants. They are predominantly African Guyanese.
Okay. And the courts that you're aware of, right?
I am aware of in the Georgetown Magistrate Court.
Right.
That is what I'm aware of. I'm also aware of Diamond, the Diamond area, those courts. But when you talk about magistrate courts and so forth, predominantly is the majority of the courts of the magistrate court is in Georgetown Magistrate. You have like one in Region 5, well, 3 in Region 5. They won't get much prosecutors there. They may have one if they have any. So.
All right, I want to come back to corruption in the Guyana Police Force.
Mm-hmm.
The report says corruption by police officers was frequent. In August, police officer Dion Bascom alleged that a businessman bribed members of the Guyana Police Force to foil an investigation into the execution-style killing of Ricardo Fagundes, a gold miner. As of October last year, police had not investigated Bascom's claim. Now, the Attorney General issued a statement last night claiming that this conclusion in this report is patently false. Then he went on to describe what to me is an investigation of Dion Bascom and not a criminal investigation into his allegation of bribery. And remember the mockery we had for a press conference, that embarrassing press conference day that we had with everyone with the top brass of the Guyana Police Force. Right. We
remember that quite clear. That was very embarrassing. It was very ashamed of that press conference. But what me say is, who get money get bargain, and that's what it is. Who get money get bargain, and that's how the Guyana Police Force operates.
Wow. I want to come back to the part of the report that spoke about extrajudicial killings. Now, I'm not sure what the process is on the private side to get these murders investigation. We're coming from a background, every time the PP is in power, you have these murders, extrajudicial killings, and they're not properly investigated. We have the, and people are saying that it's not 1400. I am quoting President Granger. President Granger disclosed, and he has access to intelligence, that during the period of what he called the Troubles, which would be from 1999 straight to around 2010, the extrajudicial killings, the murders during that period, questionable murders, were over 1,400. He said that while he was president.
I think it's an indictment to David Granger himself for you to mention that, because he was there in 5 years in government. Well, I would have thought that it would have been prudent for him to, and and I'm saying this because I on the streets of Guyana, I speak to a lot of comrades, a lot of brothers, and they're hurt, they're grieving. Mothers can't they don't they
Sleep
don't
well
know
at
where the
night.
children are. We know of reports of persons. There's this parlor where they just butcher the bodies and place them in and so forth. We're aware of these allegations out there, but and you cannot blame Barry Jack do sometimes when he speak out, and he often likes to say, but you all of these allegations you're already in government, you all didn't do nothing. As a person out there, that those are things that I am faced with in the street when we meet people, because even on a daily basis, our comrades, our supporters, they are hurt. They are hurt. They're not happy with this. And yes, these things happen. But you citing Granger as a source, I think it's an indictment to him.
Well,
Because more or less, we have been, in that
I
regard,
have
he would
I
have
have had my
failed.
share of criticism of
He would have
President Grayson.
failed. He would have failed our supporters, them, in that regard.
I agree with
You
you.
know?
I agree with you. We can't have a society with so many murders uninvestigated, no justice, and that's why some people now
Yes.
operate with impunity. For
And that is the
instance,
reality. Because they feel they could do whatever they want, there will be no repercussion. You know, so you know, and that's what we're faced with.
Courtney Cumming, that's
And
that's a murder.
that is one of the things, and that is one of the things, every day on the streets there's a complaint about that. The people are not happy, they're still hungry, they're hurt. Several things, some a lot different on not investigate and so forth.
Um, I have said that the fact that the coalition government did not do a commission of inquiry into the murder of Courtney Cumming and others, including those hundreds of people that were killed by the Phantom Death Squad. Um, I've said that's the greatest act of political ingratitude that I've ever seen. Um, but although we are aware that the coalition government failed the people in this regard, regardless of what government is in power, there is an obligation by the state to investigate these crimes. Murder is the most
Are
heinous
you expecting
crime.
PVP? Are you expecting PVP to investigate those things? You
It's like it's
expect
asking them
PVP
to
to do
investigate
that?
themselves. I think the
You
international
expect
community, I think the
you have
international
before
community
you have
should.
faith before you have faith in this government. You
I
have
don't.
faith in them.
I don't. What I'm saying is that we should.
But you expect them to do this? It's not within their interest to investigate those murders. It's not.
But I
They
think
wouldn't.
it should be in the interest of the international community
But the
ensure.
international community, no. The international community look after their interests. Let
Right.
us not forget Rwanda a few mornings ago. And even when the Rwanda case, United States of America, well, a million person you live there, they didn't want an intervention in Rwanda. And
But
that is
it's
a
black
reality.
people.
The international community look at their interests and how they could benefit. The country that you live in, they supported regimes before in the various South American countries that are questionable
That's true.
regimes because these persons may be in line with their policies, to their international policies. So because you're in line with our international policy in the United States, you could go and brutalize your people. You
Well,
could have ethnic cleansing, you could kill them, you could do what you want. And it's no different currently in Guyana. It is no different current. Actually, if you think I'm lying.
well,
Once your policies are aligned internationally with these countries,
right.
domestically, they don't really care about you. We could eat out to one another here. And there's no business to them. You know,
I have a view
that's
that
the reality.
I have a view that it has something to do with race. In Bosnia, Herzegovina, in former Yugoslavia, when they were at civil war, the U.S. intervened immediately. Remember what happened in Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia. The U.S. intervened. In Sudan, they didn't intervene until late. In Rwanda, same thing. So anytime black people are suffering, look what happened in South Africa. It took decades before the world.
And we have to. I know you talk about South Africa. We got to knock with girl. Mia, who I think I think she's a very educated woman, but the contributions that were made by Forbes Burnham, for the liberation of South Africa, Angola, and all these places, the contribution and the part that was played, to see that she ignored that.
Because she's supporting the PPP's politics. That's the reality.
It's highly disturbing. It's like Mia again. It's like Mia alone. It's like if they are beggars. Guyana get the money now, so they gotta get a little help. They operate like the ordinary street beggar. So they're telling the PPP or doing the things that the PPP want. But apparently that's Barbados, not like the regular street beggar. I was telling a friend was saying Vincent to Ralph once, what do you want to say? For benefit. So wherever go on between Guyana, they'll stay out. And we ought not to expect anything good coming out of CARICOM when it comes to us. I have no faith.
I want to come back to the Guyana Police Force and something that stunned me in this report. The report says the Police Complaints Authority conducted an investigation and found that a majority of police officers routinely violate the Constitution in conducting business with persons they arrest, and that they were even ignorant of the constitutional provisions for human rights.
For example, your right to property. Your right to property. I remember a policeman officer, he took my client for, I said, but you cannot take my client for, that is wrong. Go for court order. Because of the slowness of the judiciary, they understand and they appreciate. They understand and they appreciate what is going on in the judiciary. What is going on in the judiciary. So they would do all that they can, because they know you file a case, how much money you're going to get. There's absolutely no repercussion. So they know that they could violate your rights. So and that is a concern. They need training in that. But then again, who telling who? They know what the top heads doing. If the father they had the young ones gonna,
Let me read exactly what the top. Let me read. I'm having a delayed response from you. Let me read what the report says. There were reports of arbitrary arrest and unlawful detention. We know that. In 2021, the Police Complaints Authority issued a report covering 2019, which found most police officers interviewed were ignorant of constitutional provisions regarding arrests and searches. The report noted that a substantial number of members of the Guyana Police Force on the investigation for abuses openly violated the Constitution in the performance of their duties. Openly violated the Constitution. And this is almost all the police officers, because they're talking about police officers in the normal performance of their duties. How do we correct this? How do we correct this where the US...
I was talking on the mic. Sorry, I was talking on the mic, yes. If they're not trained, what do you expect? That, there's a lack of professionality from the top to the bottom, and that is the reality. There's nothing else I could add to it, right, for it. It's a lack of professionality. Professionalism, sorry.
How can this be addressed if the police force is not addressing it? How could citizens go to the court to get a judge or...
I think, you see, I believe my answers are not going wrong in circles, because as I said, currently we don't have judges. Yes, you're going to enforce your right, but then, and the courts must be mindful, especially in judicial, as I will mention that here, because sometimes you go to court, you go to first instance, if they disagree with you, they put every cost on you. That is a burden that you will have to carry. There's not enough judges currently. So the whole system is a mess. It's like the frustration. If you don't have judges, the police are not properly trained.
So the citizens suffer with no recourse?
To say, of course, as we said, the constitutional guardrails are not there to protect the citizens. It's like a cowboy country, a banana republic. That is what it is currently under the PPP administration.
A banana republic.
That is what it's getting into. And albeit since 2017, we could argue that we didn't have a constituted Judicial Service Corporation, which is important. a great failure. A great failure, of course, by the former administration, certainly.
If you were walking down Regent Street and someone comes up to you and says, listen, this police officer violated my rights, arrested me, abused me, detained me unlawfully. Then they just let me go. They charged me with some other charge. It was dismissed by a magistrate court. What do I do to get redress? What do you tell them?
Well, you see, and that is my practice. I did it with several persons. That's my practice. The Jamaican woman, the Asian, several different persons in Guyana I've represented who was arbitrarily arrested. And not only when you're arrested, the conditions that you're placed in and so forth, they redress through the courts. And these are persons who may be poor, they may not be able to afford you instantly. So you may more or less enter to an arrangement, a contingency arrangement and so forth.
I didn't quite get an answer there. But you just said there's the inefficiency in the judicial system.
But I didn't hear you say you didn't understand. You didn't get the answer.
No, I'm saying someone might say they don't quite understand what to do. If the judicial system is inefficient, if the police is abusing people, the citizenry, they can't get redress in the judicial system. I'm saying, how do citizens force the state to abide by the Constitution? How does that happen?
Well, I don't know how do citizens face the state, but what we have seen in several countries, what happened, at some point, the last straw may break the camel's back. And certain days, not that certainly the government don't want that to be a situation where citizens rise up. I believe it's within their interest to ensure that they have an efficient running country. But currently, as the way it is running, it's not good, it's not proper. And I'm happy the US report, I like that. Because should there be some sort of mass protesting or something like that, some sort of mass revolting against the regime, there are ample justification for citizens to demonstrate that their rights are being abused, and the Constitution protects your rights to protest. Civil disobedience, and so forth. The Constitution protects those rights. Sadly, recently, they were supposed to get a protest, but however, the police force rejected that. The police force now, if something like that happens, you will need to go and file court action to enforce that right. By the time you file that action, the date passed. You file a matter before an emergency judge. The emergency judge may probably matters like that should be dealt with instantaneously and so on. I have filed emergency action at for the Chief Justice, and she has dealt with it good, I must say.
Expeditiously.
Instantaneously. Yeah. She has done a good job with that. But some judges may put off for 2 days or 3 days. But we don't have judges, and that is a crisis. We have a crisis in the judiciary that cannot be understated.
Here's another part of the report that is stunning. Lengthy pretrial detention remained a problem due primarily to judicial inefficiency, shortage of staff, cumbersome legal procedures. The average length of pretrial detention was 3 years for those awaiting trial at a magistrate's court or high court. This often exceeded the maximum possible sentence for the crime for which the person was charged. So what the US government is saying here, are detained by the government for 3 years or more for crimes for which the maximum penalty, if they were to be found guilty and sentenced, is less than 3 years.
I really and truly, I don't do much practice within that you're in the magistrate court.
Okay.
I'm more of a constitutional
So you're not
administrative
in the
law.
criminal jurisdiction, you're more in the civil jurisdiction.
I do criminal matters. I do criminal matters. I do criminal matters. But I'm primarily constitutional, commercial, contract. I'm more high court lawyer rather than low
Mhm.
court lawyer. But those statistics and those findings are definitely of great concern.
Here's another one.
And the Criminal Bar Association need to address those things. A colleague recently had a bail act that was signed into law by Irfan Ali. I was looking at it, you know, that of itself have issues. I haven't seen the Bar Association address those things. And the question is, that in Guyana we don't have a compulsory bar association like Trinidad, where every law is a member of the bar. They could, we have a voluntary organization here. There are criticism that the bar association is the government aligned. The current president, was appointed by the government. Well, of course, yes, the government would have nominated her to sit on the procurement commission. A high-paying position. Should she have resigned from the bar association after accepting an appointment from the government? Is there a conflict of interest? Seeing the appointment, of course, the parliamentary, those are questions,
Right.
not conclusions. They're just questions. So these are things that one may want to look at, because as lawyers, we are the guardian of the democracy, and and if the lawyers are not seeing anything, and even one of the problems that we face in the opposition, I'm fighting. I have Mr. Ford there. There are some lawyers more or less in the background. But you see, but a lot of our lawyers felt, I cannot blame poor, but they're human beings, when we were in government and so forth. And of course, it's more or less self. But for me, I look at the greater good, and what a lot of lawyers' concern is, and they tell you, when you are in government, you all didn't look for us, you all weren't doing this, you all weren't, there's complaints, but the former general complaints or the former attorney general and so forth, and relationships and burning bridges and so forth. I mean, I don't think I was treated particularly well, but I believe in the people, I believe in the greater good. I know one lawyer, and we all know him. He was the government favorite lawyer, building one of the biggest buildings in Georgetown currently, make million, but probably become the richest lawyer under Granger government. The Granger government, and a favorite lawyer under Granger government. They can't call him today to do no representation for them. But persons who were not favorite are more or less the person now that you have to call upon to work on. But as I said, for me and many of Mr. Ford, probably will have one or two others. I see Dexter Todd is coming out, which we have to thank Mr. Todd at the forefront of many of the injustices, these trumped up charges, these bogus charges, our terrorism. Mr. Todd is there, pro bono, and his team, Mr. Nigel User and so on, is there. But predominantly, a lot of these lawyers want to stay out because there's no incentive to come in, because even when we went in power, you didn't remember us. And that's one of the good things about the PPP, as though are the wicked and vindictive and spiteful.
I find you
The
praising the people too
persons,
much today. I guess
and they go to the extreme. They go to the extreme. You just got to, they go to the extreme because they don't try to get no balance. You
they
have to
take care of their
qualify
people.
and what have you. For once you're aligning with them, you get it Dora corruption. So that's the difference with the people.
Well, you say corruption, so maybe is it that the APA government was not corrupt?
Well, but you see, when giving briefs and so on, you could try to space it out, and giving briefs, to lawyers. But the PPP, will more or less, and it was not that because I mentioned as one counsel who we can call today, he's probably got the majority or the lion's share. he got the lion's share certainly under our administration. He still operates under this administration, um, and and so what it is. So it's just that there are no set of principle and guidance, politically. Sometimes with policy, that makes sense in how we governing a country. You cannot, as I said, burn bridges. You cannot insult
Right.
people. You know, we,
One
you know,
one last
we
point I
can't treat
want to
people
raise, and
bad.
then
No, we,
point
mm,
taken. One last question I want to raise here, and it's something that's very disturbing. I actually remember this case, and if I'm not mistaken, I think this is Justice Joan Barlow who dealt with this case. It says in July
mm,
2022, the High Court freed Raymond Jones, a man accused of murder, after Jones was in pre-trial
mm,
detention, basically in prison awaiting trial for more than
mm.
9 calendar years, 15 full years in prison. And then the courts freed him because the prosecutor says there's no evidence to present to the court. How how
But
do we correct these issues? I mean, from a policy point of view, I mean, you were a parliamentary candidate. You're a politician. You're an attorney. You're a young progressive. How policy wise, forget partisanship, forget politics, as an attorney, as a politician,
okay,
as a
okay.
youth leader.
One way, you see, one way in one thing, as an attorney, like as a lawyer, a man is innocent until proven guilty. For
Right.
me, there's a perception that before more than so you're not entitled to bail. Nonsense. The 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 act provides, for example, it says that magistrate. I think that the judicial, sorry, the Summary Jurisdiction Procedure Act um, prescribe prescribes against granting of bail for more than treason and so on in the magistrate's court. I believe the current bail act that we have that was recently instituted basically state that instances where bail is not available, that of itself is unlawful and unconstitutional. It infringes on your constitutional right of being innocent until proven guilty, albeit the crime may be alleged crime because it is you're innocent man until a determination. So the approach in granting bail, and we need to look at that. Um, I know recently in cases in countries like Trinidad and Jamaica, the court struck down those provisions that prevent the granting of bail for certain offences. So I believe the courts need to look at those provisions, those unconstitutional provisions, strike them down when matters are before the judges and magistrate, and grant bail. Of course, society will outcry, oh, they granted bail, they granted bail. But the reality in our system, in our Commonwealth system, a man is innocent until the state has the burden of proof. So what we have now, innocent people in jail, and and I believe it was Dave Lockhart Denning or one of those great law lawyers from England who said it's better for how many thousands of guilty persons to go free than one innocent man in jail. You see, our law seeks to protect the innocent. So I think
Well,
they need to address for that particular issue the granting of bail.
that's a very good point because in
And
New
it,
York here,
mhm,
in New York State, the legislature
mhm.
passed a law allowing for every accused to be granted bail. And that's one of the ways that they attempted to address systemic prejudices against people of color in the judicial
It
system.
will be interesting. I don't know if our members they were in parliament, and that is one of I try my best not to because I don't want anyone to say I'm sour or what of because I'm not in parliament or what have you. But even with the PPP, because the attorney general, while he may have been an advocate, he may not practice much in the criminal court, or I don't know. and also on our side also we have Mr. Ford, but the PPP in the PPP side have more advocates. In our side of the parliamentary bench, we only have one advocate. We
Interesting
have
dynamic.
one. We so that of itself as a lawmaker, we in parliament, and this must be given a profession, and for you have legal background, you would understand the disadvantage. So when critical legislation are there to be debating, the resources are not there. We
Right.
don't have advocates.
So you think from a policy perspective, the way to address this is in the imbalances and the injustices that are endemic in the judicial system, to ensure fairness and that we adhere to the constitutional principle of being innocent until proven guilty, is that we must have people placed on bail, because I think the intent of these bail laws is not to punish persons for a crime, but just as a surety that a person would return back to court.
But
Um,
that is the law. As I
right.
said to you, that's always been the principle. Bail is to ensure that you return to court, that you don't abscond. And
Mm.
you can place condition of bail. You're charged with murder or not to go in this week or to stay here. Don't contact the person and so forth. In Jamaica, person get bails for murder. In other jurisdiction, and and that is the law. People may be listening to themselves, Darren, what you
But
were
uh, but
saying.
but in those circumstances, isn't it the fact that in most cases, the bail is so high it is prohibitive, and so they're basically in remand.
But the court will need to will need to consider, the bail must not be tantamount to no bail, to remand.
Right.
It must
But in
not be,
reality, that's what happens. Like
but
in New
wait.
York, judges are doing that to because there's this outcry from police officers that these people are getting released on bail because of the new law, which
All
says,
academic. These are all academic paper we're doing here on the justice system
I
in New
know.
York and Guyana. But you always have that debate, and that's what I'm saying. Um, that's what I'm saying. I would have loved to hear coming out of the debates of the Bail Act these issues, because it's topical not only in Guyana, it's regional, as you mentioned, New York and so on. But I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that from both sides. I will see if the people trying to push through something. The, you know, and those from their side of the house, we keep their mouth shut. But
Mm.
then the opposition, the ammunition isn't there to say, well, wait, what are you doing here?
But the front
Or
benches on the front bench on the opposition has a plethora of lawyers. You have Kemraj Ramjatan, you have Royce Ford, you have um, Amanza Walton.
but the issue is but we don't have advocates. It's only for the law. It's only Royce Dale's an advocate. How much? But yes, well, sorry, the time was
You have
prosecutor
Gita.
back in the day. Gita was never an advocate, based on my understanding. She was a
Tell the
magistrate
public
from
what you
a
mean by
state.
advocate. Tell our viewers what you mean by that.
Advocate is a courtroom lawyer. Well,
Right.
that's what you call it. You have criminal advocates as well. Those who engage with the law on an everyday basis, so they will see. Mr. Madison is a very intelligent lawyer. She has two masters. She practiced law in relation to aviation and to deal with the
Law,
ICs and
international
so
law
on.
of the sea, yeah.
These kind of things.
Mar-
You know,
international maritime law. Mhm.
international maritime law. So that is our specialty. But lawyers, advocates who are the lawyers who go to court, who are, and you have different types of advocates, as I mentioned. I
Would you
do
consider
criminal law,
magistrate
yes,
an advocate?
but I do, huh?
Would a magistrate be an advocate?
No, because you may be an advocate before you become a magistrate.
Mhm.
But
But does the magistrate have to advocate on both sides in being an arbiter?
I don't think that they have to advocate nothing. The magistrate has to ensure that nothing get
That
in the
justice
ring,
is
or
served.
whatever evidence is produced before then they make a determination.
Mhm.
You
I
know,
see. I
I'm going
see.
back to this whole issue of bail. So when the argument came up, at least you must have some understanding how the law should be applied. but I interestingly, and I would ask for forgiveness if I do um go and listen to it over and to see the discussions and so forth and so on with this bill act. But I more or less like have a feeling that it was rushed through. It
Mhm.
was rushed through the bill act. There was much consultations and discussion, and very soon, anyhow, let me leave that. I
Well,
understand in
this was a
India
very
how the law,
interesting
in
conversation,
India
Darren.
how the law is practiced. When you
Right.
object to bail, you have to go with a affidavit, because if a prosecutor object to bail and states his reasoning for objecting, what you're doing is basically giving evidence from the bar table,
Mhm.
and the judge or the magistrate ought not to consider that. So if you have um, an affidavit setting out your grounds, and the affidavit is evidence, affidavit for objecting to this, then the magistrate could consider, okay, we're not going to grant bail or not, we're going to grant bail. And if not, we're going to grant bail, we're going to set certain conditions.
But isn't that advocacy or that discussion of the evidence necessary in order for the magistrate to understand the level of evidence, prima facie evidence in the case, as opposed to just saying, well, this is a heinous crime, he's charged with a crime, this crime is sexual assault of a child, etc., etc. But don't, in this affidavit that you're talking about, it says should be considered. Isn't it important for certain facts, at least the primary facts, to be laid out so that the court can get a good
But
understanding of the
that is the
evidence?
practice. There is where, yes, and that's how I think the practice should be. Nobody should be able to jump up and object to bail. No
Isn't it,
one should.
isn't it a good strategy for defense to force the
But
prosecution to show their hands?
there's no requirement currently, and that's not how the law is practiced.
Mhm.
So I would, that's what I'm saying. The bail act was, it would be interesting for me to see what was debated or what was discussed under the bail act. For me,
Mhm.
the recent bail act, for me, it's unlawful. For me, it's unconstitutional. There's a summary jurisdiction act also, procedure act, that I believe also is unconstitutional and so forth. You know,
Mhm.
so it's a mix of criminal law and constitutional law,
Right,
and more or less, if why you may know it or you may learn it in laws, if you're not engaged with it on a daily basis and it's not uppermost on your mind, always should be applied and so forth, you really and truly at a disadvantage.
right. All right, as we wrap up, we are what? We're a little, a couple of minutes over program time. I think this is significant. I want us to continue this topic. Maybe we can bring in some more people in our next discussion, because I think this is one of the most significant parts of of the of the report, and it falls in line with our advocacy, with my advocacy for justice. You can't have people waiting in court, sorry, waiting in jail for years just to have a trial when your pre-trial detention exceeds the maximum sentence you could have possibly gotten if you were convicted. I mean, how do we repair that? This is unimaginable. And then you have a situation with Mr. Jones, where he was detained for 15 years, waiting on trial, and then the magistrate says, then the prosecutor says, or the DPP says to the judge, the court, we have no evidence. That is grounds for serious prosecutorial discipline. I mean, I don't understand how the DPP's office was not sanctioned by the court for this. This is a significant abuse, injustice, everything you could think about. And nobody, this man just walks from jail after spending 15 years of his life. I'm not sure if they sued the state, if there was compensation, what? I mean, how do we, and the reason I'm interested in this is because it's parallel to the problem we have in New York or in the United States. Most of these people who are affected in this detention crisis here are Black people or people of color. And that's why the state legislature pass a law saying, listen, everybody must get bail. Because that's when we know the process is fair. If you can't afford bail, then you'll suffer, you'll stay there, but at least you have an
I know
opportunity to be granted bail.
JC and these guys created um, a fund for bail
Right.
to assist person to be granted bail when they're out and so on.
But in Guyana
in the
situation,
interest
finally, in
of
Guyana
justice and so
situation,
on, certainly they need to consider these issues. You know, it's great injustice. It doesn't look good for the country.
right. Final question. To your knowledge, what is the demographic of people affected this by this crisis here of pretrial detention?
I definitely I can't give a particular data in relation to the demographic of the persons who are mostly affected.
No. Fair.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Rick, for it.
Thanks for coming on. This was a good discussion. We have to have it again. Thank you. So there's Attorney Law Darren Wade. Thank you, Darren, for coming on. We have to delve more into this report. There's some aspects we did not cover. Some of them I like to cover with the foreign policy experts in Guyana. Some of them I like to cover with our elected officials here. So over a period of the next month or so, when I come on, I'll be discussing this report because I think it's important for us to understand a couple of things: the United States values and how it's applied through its foreign policy, and what is happening in Guyana and how, as Guyanese, we can force change. And so I think it's very important for us to continue to analyze this report. But it's 10:21 now. We're 21 minutes over our program time. Thank you guys for listening. I'll be back again on Sunday, on Tuesday, and Thursday. We do the program on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Sundays. Thanks a lot for joining me. Have a good night, everybody.